Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quad Pod. I'm gonna start it off with an apology. Some things happened, and we ended up not getting the recording at the very beginning of the episode, so that's why I'm here all alone, is to explain the problem and hope that you can forgive me. Just gonna have the music play, and then it's gonna jump right where have recording started. Essentially, we started off talking about Venom, the new trailer that came out that Sony Movies put out for Venom, based off Spider-Man, with starred by Tom Hardy, is playing Venom. So we're just kind of giving our thoughts, and we didn't really miss too much. You did miss our whole intro about what the Quad Pod is. Well, the Quad Pod is your show where you can hear us talk about the shows that we watch, well, anything we really watch, anything we read, anything we listen to, or anything that we play. This episode, it was only myself, Wesley, Max, and Alec. So we are a tripod for the quad pod. So that's how it is. Like I said, you're going to hear it start off with jump into it. And then additionally, as a form of penance, I took what we usually do for a break. I threw that in at the end. Maybe if you like it or not, we'll have the song we'll play at the outro. Then you'll hear us having fun, talking, cracking jokes. And then there will be another ending there. So a false ending. And then also I will tell you a bad joke. Hopefully as a way of redemption. Yar, matey. What be a pirate's favorite letter? You think it'd be R, but a pirate's first love is actually the C.
So lean a little on your friends, they will carry you. Shelter from the stormy nights. Lean a little on your friends, they will guide you through. You know you're gonna be alright.
The first trailer was full of a teaser. It was kind of interesting how different they were, it felt.
Mm-hmm. I would say the first one was, a lot more tease. Like, oh, hey, kind of gives you some of the very general plot points.
Yeah.
But it didn't really give anything away.
Pretty much not anything at all.
Yeah.
It just had this whole, like, oh, hey, shadow government operation experimenting with something they don't understand, probably, to weaponize it, and that old song and dance.
Yeah.
Which is still present in the second one, but it's definitely much more like, what is that thing? What is it doing to me? What is this voice? What am I?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of seems like they're definitely right off the bat giving Eddie Brock some heroic qualities there, even in the trailer, which it seems kind of odd for knowing and growing up with various different versions of Eddie Brock too, to kind of see that heroic side of him coming.
Thank you. Like, that's my huge problem. Like, one of my coworkers, she's in love with this movie already, and that's fine.
Oh wow.
I'm like, you like Tom Hardy, you like Venom, that's cool. My problem is, it's so hard to separate Tom Hardy, like, it's so hard to separate the history of Venom to Tom Hardy's Venom.
Uh-huh.
Right.
I remember back with the Spider-Man animated series, and, I mean, really the whole origin of Venom as well. It's Venom attaches to this guy who has a deep rage against Peter Parker, and then the symbiote on Spider-Man gets shed, and then it's like hate for Spider-Man, hate for Peter Parker.
Right. The
It's
thing is, Eddie Brock as a character does later on adopt more anti-hero sentiments. But I think the fact that this film stars Venom, pretty much you automatically have to default them into the protagonist role, especially since we have not seen any presence of Spider-Man. And that's why I think I'm hearing more people talk about, it's like, oh, Venom, it's going to be more like a monster movie. There's, this thing that takes over this guy's body that he can't really control. And I kind of feel like that's going to be more wishful thinking, though. Like we'd like it if it went that route, but I feel like they might ultimately just play it safe with this one.
Yeah, it does. You know, a lot of the superhero movies coming out do fall into the category of being formulaic to a superhero movie. Just looking at the trailer, it looks different from anything I've ever seen before as far as a comic booky movie, which is
Yeah.
honestly kind of exciting, but at the same time, I can't help but feel like there's a pretty good chance that it'll still fall into that formulaic superhero movie.
Yeah.
I think the other problem too, it's being run by Sony,
Uh-huh.
and they don't have the best track record.
No,
Yeah.
Sony has been struggling lately. And speaking of Sony films and this and that, I remember. Alec has the misfortune of having attended this with me, but we went to see the new Ghostbusters movie when that came out, like last summer, the summer before. I don't even remember now. And a big problem that I had with that movie was it couldn't decide whether it wanted to be like an homage to the previous film, like give the old films credit where it's due, or if it wanted to be its own thing, its own entity, do something new with the franchise and with the concept that drives the franchise. And honestly, either one of those routes would have been good. The problem that it had is that it was stuck in the middle. It couldn't decide which one of the two it wanted to do, and then ultimately it failed to do both. So to bring that back around to Venom, I kind of look at this and it's like, is it going to buck trends and be its own thing? Is it going to be, closer to a superhero movie like we know and have, made bank off of at the box office? Or is it going to go for a weird hybrid that's just going to feel like it could have been something special and then botched it?
Right, and I think that Sony has a little bit more of a luxury to do that, where Marvel on its MCU films, it definitely feels like the reins are a little tighter on that one, where they definitely do have to follow a certain feel. You go to a
Yeah.
Marvel movie, it feels like a Marvel movie, where I think
You should
where
be
Sony doesn't
extremely
have
afraid.
the reins so tight, they could definitely have it branch out instead of having Captain America be a war movie and Thor be it's supposed to be a fantasy movie, but at the same time they're all still feeling a lot like a Marvel movie. It could just feel like its own horror monster movie that we're being promised here and that we're talking about.
Right. And I mean, and trying to stick to that formula is what wound up hampering. Like if you remember, there's some controversy around the Ant-Man movie when Edgar Wright was originally supposed to direct it, but he didn't share Marvel's vision for the movie. My assumption is he had his ideas for it, but it wasn't formulaic enough. It wasn't a safe enough bet with a character that's not as well known to the general audience, and they ultimately had to part ways on it.
And see, like the Edgar Wright thing, I could easily see that. Edgar Wright kind of makes his own hits, like his own movies, and part of it was, I think it wasn't going to fit in the Marvel universe. It would have had to be like a completely standalone movie with Edgar Wright, I believe. And that's probably my guess why it didn't work.
Right.
That's
The final product was heavy with Avengers references.
Yeah, I can see that both helping and hindering Marvel. I mean, yeah, it does feel like all of the movies are more connected, but at the same time, like I said, you run the risk of what I've seen some other directors saying that they call it Avengers fatigue, where people are gonna get tired of superhero movies eventually. And I think
I feel like
if everything feels too the same, that's going to end up happening. That's probably correct.
I think everybody's been holding their breath until Infinity War here, and I feel like after this it's going to be like, okay, like we played along until this point, but we really just can't keep up anymore.
And it could be you could feel that release on the breath too had just after Infinity War is done, and like they were talking about, if they kill off too many of their major players and major characters that people come back to see, it could be
Yeah, but
pretty drastic on the
let's
Now we're
effect.
turning into Avengers talk.
yeah,
Let's
let's bring this around to Venom real fast.
back to Venom.
Right.
I would say one other problem I have with Venom, the movie, the idea, is that I don't know of another version where Venom isn't tied to Spider-Man.
Right, and I know that's
Like,
a big fear that the movie has right
its own like standalone monster movie,
now.
but it's just his whole origin. Everything about Venom usually comes back to Spider-Man,
Yeah.
Right. And
maybe that's me being a jaded fan.
right,
No,
right.
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, Spider-Man's very important to Venom, so it's going to be a little out there from, like we said, everything that we've seen from Venom previously. I mean, there's so much to do with Venom that's with Spider-Man that it's already kind of a shot in the dark for Sony to just make its own Venom movie, but Venom without Spider-Man, and seeing what that character does and what that character's like when it's not tied down to its counterpart is going to be something that I don't have a lot of exposure to. I'll say,
Right.
I don't
So
know of any Venom comic books that I've ever read or seen, but I know they're out there.
right. So to kind of play devil's advocate for a moment, just for the sake of argument, like
Sure.
Hollywood is going to Hollywood. Like they're going, when they adapt things, they're going to take inspirations, but they can't take everything directly. That's why I had to keep trying to beat people over the head when Civil War came out. No, it's not going to be anything like the comics. It can't
Yeah.
possibly be anything like the
Right.
comics. I highly doubt they're going to kill Captain America or anything, and
Right.
blah blah blah. So when it comes to Venom, kind of like you're hinting at, Alec, like I do believe you can have a very strong Venom story without Spider-Man, but it is very difficult to have a Venom origin without Spider-Man
Right.
because of what's going on there. And it gets to the point where, you could almost look at this in a way like Venom could be like a standalone movie. They could have made something that wasn't tied to a comic book and have had a different movie. And now it almost feels like they're using Venom to just kind of cash in on the
Oh
property.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
would say-
Sony has gone. This isn't the first time. Like, this is the furthest they've gotten with the notion, but they have gone absolutely batshit insane at times with their movie plan. Like, if you look at things that they've talked about making, like before
Back
the
in the Amazing
Marvel
Spider-Man.
Sony deal to get Spider-Man into Civil War, Captain America Civil War, they were planning an onslaught of spin-off movies, and some are still on the slate, but this shit just stopped making sense. It's like, okay, you had Amazing Spider-Man 1, okay, Amazing Spider-Man 2, okay, and then they're like, okay, and then we're going to do Sinister Six, and it's like, okay, I'm starting to follow, because there were hints that, it's like, and now we're going to do Silver Sable and Black Cat. It's like,
Right.
okay, nobody knows who they are, and then we're going to do Peter Parker's parents as spies, and it's like, and then we're going to do an Aunt May movie where she was secretly a spy the whole time, and I'm just like,
Oh,
okay,
God.
back the fuck up. But I know you guys are excited to have Spider-Man and to try to make your own cinematic universe with them, but a lot of these plans are just foolhardy, and it's like, I don't know who are in your meeting rooms planning all this shit and who you think your target audience is. Like, I know Marvel was able to make a big smash hit with Guardians of the Galaxy, which is one of their most random ass licenses, but there was still some sense to be had in that. Like, you can point at movies like Star Wars and say, yeah, space movies can work. This other stuff, I think it would just be a much harder sell, especially when your studio has so many issues making these movies in the first place.
Well, you got to
Yeah.
remember too that was at a time where all eyes were on Marvel for their universe. Everybody was wanting to do it. There was going to be a Hasbro shared universe. There was going to be a kaiju one with Godzilla and King Kong. There was going to be
With the Black
Yeah,
Universe,
it
with
was
Mummy's
trying to
Empire.
yeah, and the Black Universe with Dracula. And,
It got to the point where I was really sick of hearing the word universe. Like,
yeah,
there's a difference between series and franchise and universe.
but I think people figured out real quick, especially with how quick a lot of those movies just failed right on their first movie, that it was just like, okay, maybe the universe thing doesn't work out quite the way you want it to.
You can't
and
just
the stars kind of aligned with Marvel, with DC, where the hands are in Warner Brothers got their hands in that so much. There's no way that it was going to work with how much the suits dig their hands into how DC was
the
operating.
thing about Marvel is put so much care and love and attention and effort into Iron Man that it really set the groundwork for everything else. Like Iron Man was massive. It was a huge smash hit, and I know a lot of people didn't like Incredible Hulk. I loved it. It was a solid follow up, and from that point, things just kind of got the ball rolling. Like Captain America, First Avenger, and Thor kind of existed, but by the time they got to those two movies, they were already strong enough after Iron Man and Hulk to say, yeah, we can actually do this.
I would say, like, part of with we're going back to like part of it was Marvel had a plan, and it was short steps. A lot of other movies just tried taking one huge leap at the beginning, and that's
Right.
what I feel limited them. Wow, today sucks.
Because I mean, if you really think about it, like with how you think about how big and massive the scope of Marvel is right now, it did start very small. The goal with those first movies was getting to the first Avengers movie.
Right.
And that was a huge goal. That was a massive milestone. Nobody had ever really done anything like that before.
And if you want to look at now, Sony's got a good start with Homecoming, but where we're talking about how different Venom is, I mean, to be honest, it's going to feel like when they do have Venom in Spider-Man, just looking at how this trailer was, when they do finally meet up and you start to have the universe start to be shared, with how lighthearted and fun Homecoming was, it's really going to feel like the Home Alone kid fighting the It clown, from Stephen King. Like, that's how it's going to feel. Because they have such a different feel, whereas with the Marvel, by the time you got done to about the end of Phase 1, you could see all of those guys being in the same movie together.
Well,
I can't see Tom Hardy's Venom being in Spider-Man.
Well, here's the thing about this Venom. We do not have confirmation whether or not it's supposed to be a part of the MCU. Sony still has the licenses for Spider-Man movies, and they made a deal to get Spider-Man into the MCU so long as Sony is directly involved with that involvement. But for everything else related to Spider-Man, that's still kind of up in the air. And there's been hints in various interviews and people being like, oh, there was a weird emphasis on that word, or oh, there was a hesitation before they answered that question. We don't have confirmation, and we might not until the movie is actually out. And even then, if the movie doesn't have Spider-Man in it, there's like very little cause for us to think it is connected to the greater whole.
Yeah. One final thought. We overtime right now.
Okay.
One final thought on Venom is if they wanted to play like the hero route, I thought they could have gone with Flash Thompson as Venom, because his whole thing is trying to curb in the ferocity of Venom's hatred.
Right.
Which, Flash Thompson was all about like, hey, we're going to actually save people. People don't die with us, other than the bad guys.
Which does Flash Thompson, remind me, does Flash Thompson exist in the Sony Spider-Man universe? Was he in Homecoming?
Yeah, he was the jerk.
Oh yeah, he was like that. He looked some kind of ethnic, like Middle Eastern.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember him, and he had like the fashion sense or something.
Trivia team or whatever.
Yeah, okay, I kind of remember him now. That'd be maybe a little bit. I'm thinking like in my head, Agent Venom, where they go into that in the comics too. I don't really see them going that route if they already have that kid there. But if Venom's going to be its own separate thing, I mean, I would love to see an Agent Venom thing.
Right? Because it'd just be so good. Anyways, we spent way too much time on that topic.
Let's move on to the next topic here.
Next one is headed by Max. We're going to be talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show, right?
The TV show. Yep,
TV
we're
show.
getting close to the end of season 5 right now, and it sounds like with season 5 that might be the last season, or they at least have the season 5 finale planned as though it would be a fitting finale to this series. And it's been an interesting little companion bit to the MCU. Particularly actually like all the way back in the very first season with how the characters responded and reacted to certain events. And it's also been kind of interesting just like hearing people's thoughts on the show, especially depending on like whether or not they watched it, when they stopped watching it, what they've heard about it. Because it's one of those things where, although it served as a companion to the movies, it's never really impacted them in any significant way. Back before Age of Ultron, they did have an episode where right before that movie, they had this thing. It's like, oh, like this thing that we were trying to do, turns out it's how we figured out where Loki's scepter was hidden. It's at this Hydra base. And then the movie opens up with the Avengers going to the Hydra base to get the scepter. And there was a little bit there. It's like, oh, so like maybe they got that information from Agent Coulson and his team. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But then, like the episode immediately following that, which so Age of Ultron, when that ended, that set forth in motion the events of Captain America's Civil War, where they had to put in, the quote unquote Sokovia Accords. So the Sokovia being the country that Ultron tried to flip around, turn upside down, and crash into the Earth. That had like zero impact on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. They came back in the very next episode. There's like a newsreel on. It's like, oh, the Avengers saved the day. And then they just kind of went right back to their own plot unhindered, which was a far cry from the Captain America Winter Soldier, which happened in season 1, and set the tone of the series on a completely different path. Like a lot of people say season 1 is hard to get through until you get to the Winter Soldier twist, and that's when the show actually starts to get good.
Oh, that was so good.
Which is kind of a hard thing for casual viewers to get through. It's like, oh god, like this is just not all that interesting at all. But now we're at a point. So, they just had an episode last week, and it was like, I'm sure the idea was supposed to be, it's like, oh, this is the last episode before Infinity War. Surely they're going to set that up a little bit. Maybe also hint at Thanos coming down from space and making a mess of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and I don't want to like spoil anything or anything too much here. There wasn't really any of that.
Oh.
I mean, the where the series is at right now, and I don't want this to be a spoiler because, and I don't consider it one, considering it's in all the TV commercials and stuff.
Sure.
But to keep things short, the Shield team, like they've seen the future, and in the future, the world has been destroyed. Like it's actually like the planet itself is in pieces. And you could look at that and go like, oh, like maybe Thanos did that, but no, they all say that it's a character from the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is never even mentioned in the movies. So they're all focused right now on, oh, we somehow accidentally caused the end of the world, and they're going through this thing. It's like, can we stop it, or is time fixed, and we're just, cogs in the machine, and no matter what we do, doesn't matter. But they're completely focused on this, where they might be destroying the world, and I'm sitting here like, how can you be a part of the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe, have a plot thread where the world ends in like less than a year, and this is something that the Marvel heroes are not involved with or concerned with?
Right.
That's kind of the reason why I got out of the show, was this kind of thing.
Yeah,
Right.
you could kind of start to see it just depart more and more from where they started to affect each other so much less. Kind of like what you said when Avengers 2 came around. I think that was really the last time that they were very interconnected with the greater MCU as a whole also, which I understand that's
Right.
really hard to do, but they were doing it for a while. Like you said, in the first season or two, they were doing a really good job of coming out with episodes that, came out at exactly the right time with the movies so that they were
Right.
relevant.
But
But
it wound up being a bit of a double-edged sword, though. Because
yeah,
like on the one hand, they were connected to the movie, sure, but they had to constantly alter the schedule to make sure that things aired at the right time, and sometimes they would go on hiatus just to make sure that things went well. And it at times it felt like a crutch, like the show
yeah,
couldn't stand up on its own without referencing the movies. So then it started to break away and become more of its own entity. And it's like, okay, like this is a show that is starting to get interesting in its own right, but then it also lost something by not being more interconnected to the movies, by not
right.
reacting to all of these events that were happening in the movies. Like some that was some of the appeal of the show, was to see a more boots on the ground approach to what was going on in this world.
And
Mhm.
right, like I said, with the timing and the scheduling, it would just I can imagine where that would just be so difficult, especially when you're in a movie universe age where Marvel's trying to be so tight-lipped about everything happening with Infinity War. It just might not have been possible. I mean, there's actors who still probably up until they saw the movie at the red carpet premiered had no idea what they were actually doing in the movie. I heard
Yeah.
stories about Tom Holland where it's just kind of like, okay, just lay here and be injured. It's just like, can I know what
Yeah,
happened to my
I did see
character?
that.
No.
But I mean, because if you think about it, though, there's also just so many scheduling things, and maybe Agents of Shield was the first time they really started to get a feel for this. Because whenever they get asked, are the Netflix characters going to wind up in Infinity War? Since Infinity War has everybody in it, and they're like, no. Like, we understand it would be cool, but the thing is, filming a TV show and filming a movie are totally different feats.
Well, even
And
then,
trying to plan that logistically just wasn't going to work for them. And I
well,
think
even
that's when Agents of Shield also started to kind of cut ties with the notion of that.
well, even having crossing over TV shows, that's a huge part of the blame on what happened with Iron Fist was the fact that they were trying to cross over TV shows and the scheduling was just not working out at all. I mean, you
Yeah,
had a guy
he had
who
like
was
two
trying to
weeks to
learn
learn
kung
martial
fu
arts.
in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it showed. Oh God, did it show?
Yeah,
But
but as far as Agents of Shield goes, like I said, I'm kind of in Wes's boat there. I kind of stopped watching it after a while. It was kind of hard to keep interest. The Inhumans, it kind of felt like discount mutants, discount X-Men that they
Inhumans
were trying to
essentially,
shoehorn. And
yeah, and especially when the Inhumans TV show also bombed completely.
where
I
I didn't,
I never even watched that. I just heard it was too bad to even give any interest in.
yeah, and I still haven't seen it either. I know it kind of felt like that they wanted to use the term Inhumans, but they didn't have where my knowledge of Inhumans is super limited in the first place. But even then, where it seemed like they were keeping all of the major Inhumans out of Agents of Shield because Inhumans was still slated to be part of the Marvel movies, a part in a Marvel phase at one point. Where they didn't want to have those major Inhumans in the TV
Yeah.
show, but you can
No,
kind of see where that all kind of fell through also.
they mucked up everything where Inhumans is concerned, between having them as a replacement for mutants in the TV show, and then it's like, okay, so we have these ones on Earth, but then there are also some who are on the moon who don't care about the ones on Earth. I never saw the show, so I don't know exactly how they decided to try to connect things. But I think it's something that Marvel would rather everybody just kind of forget about at this point.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
I
I'm
think,
fine with.
like you said, they really failed in the sense of they were just replacement mutants. No, if you're gonna look at Guardians of the Galaxy, if
Uh-huh.
you're gonna push this unknown thing, you push it hard.
Yeah.
You push it hard, and it's
Like, you go all out on the weirdness of Inhumans.
and they were
Don't try to make
gonna
them replacement mutants.
and
Yeah.
they tried to do the mutant thing with them, and they just kind of failed. The mutants do definitely stand out for a lot and stand for so much for the people who've been longtime fans of X-Men too, just about being outcast and being ousted in general
Mhm.
for your deeds. And with the Inhumans, they kind of tried to do the same thing and turn them, the Inhuman characters into something that they weren't.
Yeah, I mean the Inhuman characters on the show reflect a lot of what make some of the Marvel mutant stories so interesting. You have these people in society. You never know when somebody's going to turn out to be one, how their abilities might ostracize them, how the government might try to regulate them. Like that does get reflected, but it definitely made a mess of plans when it came to adapting the actual Marvel Inhumans. Um, but honestly, like while I have enjoyed Agents of Shield, I like a lot of the characters. I like a lot of the stories. I think a big problem the series has had is that it's put virtually all of its attention and focus onto a character I cannot stand.
Phil?
Are we talking
Sky.
about? Don't you mean Quake, Daisy Johnson?
Yeah, whatever they
Nick's
decide to
brother.
call her, and it's like I was so mad when they decided to like turn her into an Inhuman. It's like, oh, this is your real name, and now you're gonna have the superhero name, because it's like, dude, I do not like this character. She's just so selfish and angsty, and just like pretty much only thinks of herself and thinks that, and then at the same time tries to like white knight everything, and it's like, oh my fucking god, please stop.
Oh
They
man.
just keep bringing everything back around to her. It's like, oh, turns out your parents are alive and they're interesting. Turns out you're an Inhuman and everything's gonna revolve around you now. And it's like, oh, now we're gonna like groom you to be the next leader of the team. And it's like, stop, stop trying to make this character interesting or likable or like I want to watch her. No. Like the series would have been so much more interesting if like she were just not in it. I feel, well, maybe it would be less interesting, but it'd be more enjoyable.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think as far as a character goes, I think a lot of people do like her. They wouldn't just keep her around as. I mean, there's people who do analytics and marketing. You'd think that if she stuck around this long, that people would generally assume that it's a well-liked character that people want to have the character around too. I don't
Yeah,
think people keep around somebody nobody likes.
I didn't have too much trouble with her, but I can easily see what you're saying. Like every season has to revolve around her. First
Yeah,
season was she hacked something, and then she was a prisoner for the entire season until she joined the team.
yeah, pretty much. It's like the very first episode was like, oh, here's this hacker chick in a van, and then it's like, yeah, now she's the new person on the team and trying to fit in and deciding whether or not she wants to be an agent, and then yeah, then her parents, and then Inhuman, and now she's a runaway vigilante. Now she's back on the team. And,
I will say,
it makes me so happy every time somebody on the show calls her out for her bullshit.
mm,
Like she'll try to high road white knight something, and then it'll just be like, dude, you just did this dumb thing last year. Don't start lecturing on shit.
There are characters all over the place. I don't know. I've always liked the character of Quake. I knew Quake the character from comics and other things, and I always thought it was an interesting character. I'll admit I was actually kind of excited when they revealed that she was Quake. I kind of knew it wasn't going to be the Daisy Johnson. I would have rather they just kept calling her Sky instead of her trying to change her name that everybody refers to her as Daisy now. It felt kind of weird and forced, but it's like you can just be Quake, that's fine. But I was kind of excited to see it. It felt like they had a major character from at least my era of comics when I was really big into comics, that they had someone show up that I knew really well when they had like maybe not even D-listers, like E-listers from Marvel that you never even heard of were about the only references to the source that you would see in that, because they were so afraid of accidentally using somebody that they would want to use in a movie someday.
Yeah, and for most of the characters that they did wind up using, they killed off like the next episode for whatever
They
reason.
never stuck around, and a lot of the villains, heroes, whatever that showed up until Ghost Rider made an appearance in season 4. Ghost Rider was the first
Ghost
really
Rider
major
was
player
fantastic. That
to
was
show up,
worth
and it was
staying
the
on the
funnest.
show for.
It was the funnest thing that had happened in the show up to that point, and it had 4 seasons up to that point. I mean, you had Lady Sif stop by once, and then that character's not even in the movies anymore. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess they even killed off the Warriors 3. Spoilers. Sorry, I should probably say
Yeah.
spoilers before I say that, but in
long enough.
3 when they kill
Yeah.
off most of the major characters anyway, it's
But
I don't know.
you would have thought that if the show was going to be based on anybody, it'd be based more on Phil Coulson, who was actually in the movies, and they brought him back from the dead for the purpose of the TV show.
Yeah.
A lot of the show is trying more and more to focus on all of the characters collectively. It just keeps coming back to Daisy Johnson for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But
I'd like to see more
still-
Coulson, but at the same time, it was kind of hard to see what they were trying to do with Coulson's character also,
Yeah.
because the role that he played in the movies was very different also, and that was the
Yeah.
role that everybody.
And I love Clark Gregg. I've been loving watching him work.
Oh,
I
fucking
do-
love Clark Gregg.
I do kind of miss who he was in the movies versus who he eventually became through the course of the show, which is also why I'm like ecstatic to have heard that he's supposed to be coming up in the Captain Marvel movie, since
Yeah.
that takes place in the 90s. Which I'm wondering how they're going to make a movie that's set in the 90s work when really, like, it didn't really seem to have any momentum in the world until Iron Man. Sure, Captain America was back in the 40s. Then you had the Agent Carter series, which I could also talk about a little bit. But, you know, when Nick Fury's talking, it's like, oh, I want to get super people together. It's not like, oh, by the way, like, I met Chick Superman back in the 90s. That's kind of inspired a lot of it.
We'll see how they do it. I'm sure they'll have a way to do it where they don't have to retcon everything like it's a comic book.
That's
and
the
make a
issue.
comic
Like,
book
Marvel
movie
has
out of
been
it.
retconning a little bit with some of their stuff. Like, one of the big offenders I know is, like, you go back and watch Iron Man. You know, you have Agent Phil Coulson there, and it's like, oh, you know, the strategic homeland, blah blah blah. Like, he says the name for Shield, and, you know, Tony Stark is like, you need to find a shorter name for that. And it's like, we're working on it. But then in one of the Agent Carter, I think it was a short actually, she's on the phone with Howard Stark, Tony Stark's dad of all people, who says, hey, I want to make an organization called Shield. So you're telling me they already had the acronym back in 1940s times, and that the person who came up with the name, his son, heard the full name of that thing, said you should shorten that to the organization that wasn't already using a hand of that. But I digress. Their universe has grown a lot since that very first Iron Man movie, and, you know, they're doing what they can to make the universe seem bigger. But it is what it is.
Well, let's take that chance. It's been a while. We went over on Venom. We went over on this one.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's all good.
But hey, we're gonna take a break and get back to you with another heavy Marvel topic.
Howdy, how you doing? Hope you're doing all right. I'm doing fine myself. My name is Jim Bob. I'm here to promote to you your favorite thing you've never heard of. I'm talking about unicorns. Unicorns are majestic creatures. When you see one, you know you will, because your heart will be filled, just filled to the brim with joy. So hey, I hope you see a unicorn sometime in your life, and I hope you see one soon, because, you know, we all feel pain. But when you see that unicorn, you will cry from joy. You've heard that at the beginning. You've heard those little mid-riffs here in this break, and you're going to hear it again at the very end. What you are hearing is Friends by Miracle of Sound. That is a wonderful song, and not only is that a wonderful song, Miracle of Sound makes a lot more songs that are wondrous. They're all usually inspired by video games. They're not just video game songs. They're songs inspired by, well, mostly video games, but also additional things like Firefly. He's made a Legend of Zelda one. He's made Overwatch one. And this one is based off Guardians of the Galaxy. So if you like some original music mastered beautifully, I will tell you. I think the music is mixed and mastered. And then, of course, he's making most of all the music himself. Also, the Wonder Woman song. That is another beautiful song. So if you get the opportunity, you happen to be wanting some new music, check out Miracle of Sound. Or you know what? Just check it out anyways, because it's worth it. But also, probably do that after you finish our podcast, so that way you still hear what we got to say. Don't worry, you will be hearing more of the song at the very end. You'll actually hear the very end of the song at the end of our podcast. So make sure you stay tuned to listen to that. Otherwise, later.
What do you call a dead parrot?
I don't know.
Polygon. And welcome back. So there's your crappy dad joke for the day.
Well, we should always tell jokes. We should always tell jokes for the break time.
All right. Well, I've got a list of them, of bad jokes that I love.
Perfect.
So, listeners, next time you'll hear another one. It's going to be very good. But otherwise, let's get into the next topic, the last topic, the biggest topic. Avengers Infinity War is coming out, and Alec has some predictions. He wants to lay out before the movie comes out so he can call it. He can say, I was right.
And it's going to be documented and recorded that I called it.
Yes. Mind you, this is Wednesday before the release.
And this is huge. Everybody's speculating on what's going to happen because Marvel's definitely not been making it a secret that that people are dying in this one. That some people are going to get messed up and they're not going to show up in later movies. Their contracts are done and their role in the MCU is over. So I've seen.
I haven't heard them confirm any of that.
Well, maybe they haven't confirmed. Maybe that's everybody.
I feel like that's just where all the hype is right now.
Maybe that's just where all the hype is right now. But I will say that Kevin Feige, however you want to say his name, I've heard it pronounced several different ways. Anyway, I believe he's confirmed that the next phase of Marvel movies is going to be much different. It's going to be completely different than the current phases of Marvel. And I feel like he would make that kind of statement if we're not going to be seeing very much of our usual Marvel heroes. Everybody who started the Marvel Phase 1 has already finished their trilogies. I'm assuming that 3 is all they're going to get, which makes me feel like all of the originals are going to be kaput after this movie. I feel like there's going to be death galore. And while it isn't necessarily a super smart move to X some of your most successful franchises, you got to keep in mind also that those franchises have kind of already run their course and the stories are done. You can kind of see Captain America's at the end of his rope there. Same with Thor. Last time we saw Thor, spoilers, I remember to say it first this time. But Asgard has been destroyed. I mean, Asgard is its people, not a place, but at the same time, all of the people are on a ship being intercepted by Thanos. So everything that makes Thor and Thor's individual movies what they are is pretty much at an end at this point. So what more can we do, or are we going to be able to do with Captain America? I think these guys are definitely getting the boot. If not this movie, then the next movie. But I think for this next movie, Thor, Captain America, and everybody's most popular vote off the Islander, Vision, since he has an Infinity Stone implanted in his head and likely was giving him life. is going to be ripped away from him, and he's probably not going to survive that. I don't see a way that Vision's still going to be Vision after he loses that Infinity Stone.
Right.
Um, I think Iron Man is the favorite to predict for everybody to be done. Just based on the fact that Robert Downey Jr. seems like he's ready to be done doing Marvel, and he's about at the end of his rope on his contract too. And this is just looking more like at a real life perspective than the movie perspective, also. But I feel like between the two of them, everybody is looking at Captain America and Iron Man as the two favorites to go down. You know, kind of like we were looking at Civil War, where they were the heads there. We're also looking at both of these guys, neither of them making it out of Infinity War, either Part 1 or Part 2. But I think Captain America's going to go down before, mostly because I think they're going to want to make this movie be fairly heartbreaking. I think Iron Man would take Captain America's death very hard, and he's going to do what he usually does. He's going to take all of the blame onto himself. He's going to find a way to make himself responsible for everything that's happening in Infinity War and take it kind of harshly and do something kind of crazy to try to make things right. And I think that's a typical Iron Man move. And I think they are probably going to pay a little bit of an homage to the comics when Captain America died, and as a result of the Civil War and those two leading the two opposing factions, that Iron Man is going to heavily regret all of his actions before the end of this movie series. One prediction that I haven't seen yet, that's something I feel fairly certain of, and this that I'm almost positive that I'm going to say I called it once we see the movie tomorrow, is Hawkeye's going to die immediately. As disappointing as that is and how much I love that character, I've kind of given up on them giving the character justice at this point.
Yeah, you and I have had conversations about how cool Hawkeye is and how he constantly gets the shaft, no pun intended.
No pun intended, but it's still kind of fun to say.
With these movies, yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, the only survivors that I personally feel are guaranteed are Ant-Man, Wasp, Spider-Man, and at least one Guardian of the Galaxy, because I'm looking at a list of upcoming movies, and those are the only ones after Infinity War that are confirmed.
You don't think Doctor Strange is going to have any more movies?
I think Doctor Strange and Black Panther are going to be okay. Like, I think it'd be kind of foolish for Marvel to kill off Black Panther with how popular it was. Now, granted, this movie would have already been filming and everything long before Black Panther came out and became the giant that it is now. But like I think they'd be missing out on a lot with how popular that character has gotten. Doctor Strange, I feel like the only reason he's as character as he is right now is not necessarily because the movie was good, but just because Benedict Cumberbatch has that strong of a celebrity presence, of that much star power. Yeah. And there's also a lot more that can be done there on that front. But I do wonder, because some of these characters, it's like, yeah, they're strong enough to get a movie, but are they strong enough to get a trilogy?
Yeah.
Because I know some people are just scratching their hands at Ant-Man and the Wasp, and it's like, of all of them, like, Ant-Man was one of your least grossing movies, but that's one got a sequel. Okay.
I actually think people really enjoyed Ant-Man, and I think that's because of Paul Rudd's star power. I mean, I think people
Paul Rudd, I love, and I thoroughly enjoyed the first Ant-Man as well. And I know we talked a little bit earlier about, it's like, oh, like how different it would have been under Edgar Wright's vision.
Yeah.
Still perfectly enjoyable. I honestly, when it comes to Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think that'll be one of the first victims of the superhero fatigue, just because Ant-Man wasn't as popular of a hero or as a movie, and with that being like the first movie after Infinity War, people might be like, okay, like you're not going to top that with these two bite-sized heroes. Like, okay, that's okay. We'll pass on this one.
If they get his buddy to come back, though, the one that likes to tell stories, and the one that's at least I got
Yeah.
the man. If they get him
I
to come
forget
back,
it.
I think people would come back just for that character too, because he was a lot of fun.
Yeah. But a part of me is actually kind of like severely disappointed that there was a trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp, because unless that movie like chronologically takes place before Infinity War, it's like we already know the world's okay and that Ant-Man as Giant Man can be a hero for people, and they're working with like, oh, there's a bad person trying to get into our company and steal secrets. It's like, really? We're concerned with that when this alien came down and basically just killed a bunch of people?
I think there's a fairly good chance that the movie takes place before Infinity War. I think there's
Yeah.
a fairly good chance.
Like, if the two of them are not in Infinity War, and this is supposed to be like, okay, at the end of Infinity War, we know something now that'll help with the telling of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Because one theory I heard with that is that because they cast Michelle Pfeiffer as the original Wasp, the one who, quote unquote, died while working with Michael Douglas's character, the original Ant-Man.
Right.
They're like, oh, maybe they shrink down to the point when they like see her and find her, but like when you shrink that small, things start getting weird. And when things started getting weird in the first one, some people pointed at as like, oh, like there's some hints here toward Doctor Strange, which is coming out later. Like there's some overlap here, and it's like, well, maybe that shrinking downness like has time travel get involved, which then sets up Captain Marvel back in the 90s. And now we're getting all sorts of convoluted, but hell, I'll go along for whatever ride.
It's comic book movies. I mean, that's the definition of convoluted is comic books. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how they keep going for so long, is have a whole bunch of convoluted story arcs and find out ways to bring certain characters and back into the.
But movies need to be not convoluted in order to grab as much of the general audience as possible.
Also true.
You ever talk to anybody about a convoluted movie or a complicated one that doesn't make sense? Most of the time, they're niche movies that only film students like talking about.
Yeah. Well, in any case, Infinity War predictions. So you're thinking that at worst, one of the Guardians will survive.
At worst.
I'm thinking, like I said, I'm fairly certain that the characters are loved enough that I don't think Marvel has the balls to kill any of the Guardians off. I don't think so. I think they're all going to be fine, but I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'd say maybe Drax and Gamora have the largest ties to Thanos where they could get involved in something pretty stupid.
Yeah.
But
part of me almost wants to say Nebula. I know in the comics Nebula was the one to defeat Thanos, but I feel like she's been so bit piece supporting character that if anybody does defeat Thanos, I don't know as if it would be her. Like, I feel like it'd be somebody a little bit more well known and liked with the general audience, a little bit more fan servicey in that regard.
If
At the
anything,
same time, this is just part one. Like we have in between this and Avengers 4, which is supposed to finish this Thanos arc, is Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel. So that's something to be thinking about too.
if anything, I would put of any Guardians characters maybe kick in the bucket in this one. I'd be comfortable putting Nebula on that list. I think Nebula's, kind of like what we were talking about with Venom. I think the importance of her character kind of begins and ends with Thanos and Gamora.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, it could be Gamora. Like, if one of them dies, if either one of them dies, whichever one of them dies, like, that's going to hit them in that, like, my God, like, I just got an actual sister out of this person, and now they're dead. Like, there's some good emotional impact that can be construed from there.
which I think every single emotional impact they're going to go for is going to happen in this thing. I think one of the things that kind of helps out my predictions was Iron Man's little future vision that he had in Avengers 2 with all of the Avengers dead. With Scarlet Witch gave him that little vision, but I think that might lend a little credence to the fact, or to my guess, that all of the originals are gone.
Yeah, they might kill all of the originals so that when it comes to the second part, it's a clean slate with the B list of heroes and kind of get the audience more attuned and on board with them.
Exactly.
So maybe that would also severely piss everybody off if they kill off all of their favorite characters and want them to like ones that they never liked in the first place.
I don't think it's all going to happen this movie. I don't think it's all going to happen tomorrow. Like I said, I think Cap and Vision and Thor are all dead tomorrow. I think Hawkeye's dead tomorrow. Like I
Here's
said,
another one. What about Hulk?
I'll get to that in a second. First, I'm going to say Hawkeye is going to be the reason they go to Avenger mode. I know that they had to have Coulson bring everybody together last time, but I think they are going to have Hawkeye go out in a blaze of glory. But I think that's the reason why he's not in any of the trailers or he's not in the poster. I think
because he dies like in the first 5 minutes or something.
Yeah, they're going to have him go out in a very short blaze of glory.
That's going to hurt me in my hurt place.
And it's going to hurt. Like we said, we need justice for Hawkeye, but I don't think it's going to happen. But for Hulk, my intuition is telling me that it's going to be tied to Black Widow. Do you guys feel weird about the Black Widow romance with Hulk?
Yeah, that felt so shoehorned in Age of Ultron that
Wes,
it's like.
What do you think? I know Hulk's your favorite. How did you feel about that?
I didn't care at all. Kind of made some sense, but it was like, oh hey, and then of course Hulk is like, well, this ain't gonna work because I'm Hulk.
Yeah.
So
my
here's where I'm at
thoughts on that one is that the reason why it felt kind of forced is that they're going to have a little bit more reason behind it. I think they are going to kill off Black Widow. I think that is going to happen, even though they're rumoring a Black Widow movie.
They already
killed
her hair.
Die. They already killed her hair.
I'm sorry. ScarJo as a redhead works.
Yeah, the redhead works out for her.
I mean, if we're going back in time, a Scarlet Widow movie wouldn't be bad if we're going back in time.
Going back in time to the Russian spy ballerina.
They still talk about that every so often. The interviewer asks, "What about a Black Widow movie?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, we're totally talking about that. We'll see." So here are my thoughts on the Hulk right now. The Hulk is the strongest there is. Like, I don't think that there's too much argument about that. Like, that's just Hulk. He's the strongest, biggest threat that can ever possibly be conceived in the Marvel universe to anybody, including Thanos. Like, Thanos in the comics is always like, Hulk is pretty much the only creature in the living universe that I do not like fighting. That I will avoid fighting at all costs. So,
which is why I think it's going to take Black Widow to get him to that point. I think Black Widow's going to die first.
No.
That's why they shoehorned that romance, is because it's gonna piss Hulk off to high heaven, and he's gonna be unbeatable, and he's gonna make Thanos his bitch.
Here's what I'm wondering: Thanos could come down, and if he beat Hulk, like if he legitimately killed Hulk, that would solidify just how much business this guy meant, just how large of a threat. There is not a single more threatening act he could take than to kill off the Hulk. And that, like, to really just show how much of an army they're going to need to take down this one guy and a couple of his equally horrible cronies, who we have not seen that much about.
Right.
Number two, they have been having a bitch and a half trying to make Hulk movies happen, and they've pretty much at this point given up, because the best Hulk movie they could have made, Planet Hulk, they chalked into a Thor movie to beef up ticket sales for Thor, because the Thor movies kind of struggled too. They honestly might be at the end of what they can do and what they're wanting to do with the Hulk at this point. So I would not be surprised if he wound up falling victim.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure all of the original's dead. I do include Hulk in that. I think you're wrong. I think that's how he's going to show his power right off the bat. Is he's going to take the Hulk down and manhandle him. I don't think Hulk is good enough to take on Thanos at this point. But like I said, when they shoehorned in that Black Widow romance, that, like I said, to me didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. I think the whole purpose of that is you fuck with Black Widow, you get Hulk pissed off, and that's how Hulk's going to be strong to take on Thanos.
But you totally see and recognize, and it might be too that, maybe not immediately, but as Thanos starts getting the Infinity Stones, and we start seeing just how strong he gets with the Infinity Stones, if he's able to take Hulk out, then that also shows presence to just how powerful those things are when collected.
We'll see. I've been avoiding trailers for the most part. I've kind of gotten into that camp where I want most things in the movie to be a surprise that I haven't seen before.
Same here, yeah. I think I watched the very first trailer that ever came out, and after that, like, nothing.
See, I've been watching the trailers.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And one thing that's not been answered, that I've not seen, that I want to pose to you guys. Where does Adam Warlock come in? Does he come in, even?
Adam Warlock, you said?
Yeah.
Adam Warlock. I'm
sure that's
Gauntlet comics.
Pretty sure that's going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yeah, which might come before the next Infinity War movie, but it's pretty well known that Adam Warlock traditionally is very closely tied to the Soul Stone of the Infinity Stones.
Right.
So most people are assuming that's where that's going to come in, and if he is involved, I don't think it's going to happen until part 2.
So
we saw his cocoon.
Right, but that's just the thing. I don't think he's going to be involved because of the cocoon. Now let me explain. In the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, the cocoon was in the collector's library, but it was only in there as an Easter egg.
Yep.
So in the second movie, they're like, well, okay, now we want to actually do something with this character, so we're making a different cocoon and drawing attention to that so that we can introduce him at a later time. And because it was like in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, that does kind of make me think that it's something that's going to be saved for Volume 3. And because Volume 3 is going to be after Avengers 4, Infinity War Part 2, whatever it winds up being called, I think Adam Warlock being involved with that would have direct fallout from Infinity War. Maybe whatever happens to the Soul Stone winds up with Adam Warlock. Maybe Adam Warlock has a direct involvement in the Infinity Gauntlet and making sure that power is never collected again and starts separating the stones or something. I see a strong contender there. I'm not saying it's impossible for him to show up in Infinity War, but right now that's kind of like I struggle for characters having their introduction in this Avengers movie.
Right.
It worked out kind of for Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, but even
worked out for Black
those
Panther
characters
also.
you saw in a previous movie.
Yeah.
See, I'm thinking it could be. Now, this is just something I came up with after this whole talk. What if we have this whole time travel segment between movies? Something happens at the end of Infinity War that wakes up Adam Warlock. And then he's like, oh shit, time to get to work. And then it shows his involvement in these movies in the past.
Uh-huh.
And then then it brings him back. So you can kind of get a quick introduction of him in those very small parts of those other movies. And then in Infinity War Part 2, he'll be like, okay, let's clean this up.
Possibly. So here's the other thing. Here's another thing with Adam Warlock. Marvel does what they can to keep secrets. They are absolute shit at keeping secret of casting.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody if Adam Warlock was going to be in Infinity War, they would already have some actor cast as him.
Yeah, there was some set photos that would have been released of that too, because people who work on movies love to take pictures and spoil those
And
things.
and Marvel has kind of moved past like B grade actors for some of their, like they started off with Robert Downey Jr., who I'm not saying is B grade, but he needed to come back to get where he's at now. Chris Evans was not a big deal by any means. Mark Ruffalo, I would say, was also kind of small time, but like now they're getting Chris Pratt and Benedict Cumberbatch and Paul Rudd. Like these are much bigger names.
Zoe Saldana's pretty huge too. She's been in a lot of stuff. We got Bradley Cooper playing a raccoon even. So
Right. So if Adam Warlock was cast already, I think we would know.
I'm on the IMDb right now. And
you really
Yeah, I
want to do that to yourself, Wes? You know how great Batman versus Superman, well, maybe still wouldn't have been that great, but like if you didn't know Wonder Woman or Doomsday were in that movie, or if Spider-Man was going to show up in Civil War, how awesome that would have been. Do you really want to do this to yourself if he's in there?
See,
I
that's
don't
the
get-
thing.
I don't see anyone anyways, so
I'm still mad that Marvel revealed that Spider-Man was going to be in Civil War. That would have been the best surprise of all time for the history of ever.
They made the same mistake Batman versus Superman did by showing showing up.
Instead, they went the money grubbing route and said, "Oh, we'll sell tickets if Spider-Man's in it. Put him in the trailer." So I understand from a business perspective why they did it, but they ruined what would have been the best surprise they ever could have put in any movie ever produced.
But it
They
kind
have
of worked. People went nuts
No.
over that trailer, and it probably had a lot more people go see the
Sure,
movie.
yeah, it worked. From a business standpoint, it's a very smart move, but my God, they could have been legendary.
I'm gonna have to retract my guess, seeing there's no one on the IMDb for Adam Warlock. My heart breaks.
I'm not saying it's impossible, Wes. I'm not saying it's impossible. Maybe an after-credit scene or maybe something right at the end that was kept secret. I mean, if they really want it secret that bad, they could probably keep it off of IMDb. Which
I will say,
like the after credits where they would
I
have
will
to
say
show
for Infinity War, I'm going to be pissed if it's another like Thor Ragnarok joke and credit sequence. Like, give me something tangible to hang on to and hype over and drool over.
especially if it's going to be a cliffhanger.
None of this, Jeff Goldblum self-clapping and Howard the Duck bullshit. Like, give me something real.
Yeah, like I said,
Especially since it's going to end on a cliffhanger.
it's going to be a cliffhanger. It's going to be. And here we are recording me calling that one too, because it's going to be a cliffhanger. I swear to God.
Well, part of it is too, is that remember Avengers? That was a huge cliffhanger. Seeing Thanos.
Yeah,
but it was after the credits though was seeing Thanos, so that was already the movie didn't end on a cliffhanger. It just gave you the extra
movie ended.
Right. Well, hang on. Remind me what was Age of Ultron's cliffhanger? Or end credits sequence, I should say.
Crap, what was it?
Shit, don't do this to me.
Granted, okay, so to be fair, the first Avengers was actually the Swarma scene. If you want to be real about it.
Yeah, great.
I don't remember what Age of Ultron's was.
I'm looking it up now.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't the Thanos grabbing the gauntlet out of
it was.
This weird vault, was it?
Oh, yeah.
Or was that Guardians of the Galaxy?
Credits.
No, Guardians of the Galaxy was Howard the Duck. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Age of Ultron was him grabbing the gauntlet.
Yeah, if I remember right, somebody else had kind of an odd theory about how they knew the Infinity Gauntlet in the Asgard vault was fake, was because he definitely didn't grab the gauntlet out of the Asgard vault because he would have just grabbed the Tesseract while he was there. That's why they had to have, Kate Blanchett doing the whole, this is a fake, by the way. And the way you're supposed to tell was like, I think the Infinity Gauntlet's supposed to be a left-handed gauntlet, and that was like a right hand, I think.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, I think this kind of goes back to what I was talking about with retconning a little bit. Like, I do think it was originally in there as an Easter egg, and then when they decided
To do
to do Thanos, they probably had several meetings about, okay, now how does he get the gauntlet out of the vault? And then ultimately they just said, you know what? He's not. Let's just throw in a joke in and figure out something else.
Yeah, which to be honest, I think that was really clever retconning. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that was something that they hadn't planned on previously, and they had to figure out what was going on. But yeah, I think if it's retconning, it's really clever retconning at the same time, and they handled it beautifully.
Oh yeah,
hilarious.
That made for a very good joke.
But in any case, how are we doing on time, Wes? Can we keep talking about Infinity War? Or do we got to call it?
We're kind of over. I'm gonna be honest. I kind of missed recording some of the very beginning, so I don't know. I can't remember where I started. So we're already at an hour 11, with a quick 3-4 minute break that we took for ourselves, not counting the late recording start. So kind of over.
All right.
Okay.
I think I've exhausted a lot of my talking right there.
Done talking for the night?
Final thoughts, though, on Infinity War. I will say I don't think we're going to see the Sixth Stone in the movie. I don't think it's going to show up.
Well...
But we'll see for Part 2. I think it's going to save a hell of a lot for Part 2.
I don't know. I think the cliffhanger could be him getting the stuff.
It could be a complete surprise. It wouldn't shock me if... I mean, it'd be a nice surprise, but I don't think it would shock me if the last stone was a place that nobody predicted.
Mm-hmm.
And just have it come completely out of left field.
I see the ending as he gets the Sixth Stone, has the gauntlet, snaps his fingers.
Screen goes black.
I think my prediction is that he's got the 5. He's going to have all 5, and they find out where the last one is, and it's going to be a race to the last stone.
That's a tease, though, because you know he's going to get all 6. Like,
because you know he's going to get it.
If he doesn't get all 6.
But you got to have some kind of dramatic tension in the next movie instead of just getting shit on by a reality-bending Infinity Gauntlet. There's going to be some tension and some struggle to keep him from getting that.
The Infinity Gauntlet can't be that powerful either because we have no Celestials, really.
Yeah. Every movie that a stone has been in, the stone's always endgame. The stone that is in that movie is the end all be all of the movie. You know, it's the entire point. If you end up with the stone at the end, you win.
I have another theory.
What's up?
But we're out of time.
Okay.
I'll just say when we come back and it happens, I'll be like, I called it.
Well, we're recording it here, so
just have to trust me.
Okay.
So I'll be right no matter what. No matter what. God. Sorry.
You're good.
It's been a day. But, any very quick 10-second comments wrapping up Avengers?
I'm set.
Yeah. Excited. And curious.
All right. Sounds good.
All
So,
right.
hey, that was the Quad Pod, where we talked about 3 topics. So today's a tripod. But still, hey, it was fun, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of stuff to talk about, and it's all exciting stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay, Marvel Day.
Yay,
Yeah,
Marvel
that pretty
Day. I love these Marvel ones.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. If you didn't know, the introduction, a little quick mid bits, and the outro you'll be hearing soon. That's all done by Miracle of Sound. The song is called Friends, based off Guardians of the Galaxy. So hey, might check that out. Of course, the link is in the down below part. So check that out. Good music. I love Miracle of Sound. Good stuff. But that has been the Quad Pod from Alec,
Yo.
Max,
Bye-bye.
and myself, Toodaloo.
Yay.
Heavy
As heavy as I am.
Oh my god. Heavy is some really heavy things. I can't come up with anything. I'm sorry.
No. So, heavy as a Snorlax.
Sounds good. We'll take a
Heavy is a whale lord. They're all over the place right now. And this guy thinks he's hot shit just because he has a purple whale lord. He didn't have to kick me out of the gym to show it off.
How
Asshole.
heavy is Whale Lord? Does Whale Lord fly? I feel like Whale Lord flies. How heavy could it be? If it
I think whale lord only flies because there's no better way to represent it in the game.
Oh,
Yeah, all the fish Pokemon fly.
Hang on, let me see what my Pokedex entry on this thing is. 400 kilograms. Seems light.
Can you translate that to American for me? I'm not super sure.
400 kg to pounds. 881 pounds.
That's
Oh,
a little
okay.
bit.
The whale is only the whale's not even 900 pounds. It's not even a ton. They're saying a car weighs twice as much as a whale. Who writes these Pokédex entries?
Well, it flies. Well, then again,
It
I
says
don't know.
this giant
Airplanes are pretty
Pokemon
heavy too, actually.
swims languorously in the vast open sea, eating massive amounts of food at once with its enormous mouth.
I mean, one of the things with whales is that they do weigh so much that they can't be supported on land. So that's why they're in the sea, because of
Yeah.
buoyancy.
It's why it's so dangerous when they're beached. It's not just that they dehydrate; they just start collapsing in on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But a car is heavier than them.
Then Whale Lord.
Yeah.
Car
Well,
is twice as heavy.
it's
Hey,
gonna
let me
be-
check. Let me check the Bulbapedia.
Speaking of cars, I did hear the other day of in insurance. They're watching the Avengers movies and trying to figure out how
It's
much.
twice as heavy on Bulbapedia. What the hell?
Anyways, trying to figure out how much damage and if all that's covered. They said if the Incredible Hulk smashes your car, is it covered? And it's like, yes, but not if Thor smashes your car. Well, why not? Well, insurance doesn't cover acts of God.
Okay, my Whalerd's only 300 kg, but I think mine's small. Yeah, I have a particularly small Whalelord. I just
he's
opened it today.
It's not the size of your Wailord, it's how you use it.
Uh-huh. Okay, are we good on break? I mean, you can always just like edit, right?
Yeah. Alright. Trying to think what kind of commercial could I come up with quick? What do I have on my desk? I don't have anything.
Sticky notes.
I do have sticky notes. I don't have anything. Nothing's coming to the top of my head. That's why you use sticky notes. To remind yourself of those crappy jokes you have.
Yeah.